Thanks for watching this episode of Good Work Now, your resource for finding and creating good work. Working in teams is more important than ever. Joining me to talk about this important issue is Dr. Jeff Graddy. He is a senior associate at the Leadership Research Institute. He's also an executive coach and leadership development consultant, and he works frequently on this issue of team effectiveness. So stay tuned to learn more about how to be a more effective team player. Jeff, why is working on teams so challenging or difficult for employees?
Well, I think it comes down to kind of motivation and personality. When you think about a team member, any one member of that team can have any number of personality traits and any number of kind of styles they like to work. Well, if you put enough people together in the same room and try and say everyone go towards a single goal, people can have all kinds of ideas about how they want to accomplish that, and all kinds of innate drives or innate kind of pressures that they feel about how they like to do things. So I think a part of it is just everybody has a different style and a personality, and sometimes those things clash. I think the other part of it is that everybody feels frustrated at times, and in general, we don't get a lot of great training. Both in terms of kind of upbringing in school systems, or once you get into the corporate world, about how to deal with conflict. Right? Conflict is inevitable. If you're working in a team setting, there's going to be frustrations. There's going to be conflict about ideas, about personality traits, about how things get done. But of course, if we're not very skilled at handling that, it only makes it worse.
What can an employee do to, quote unquote, fix a dysfunctional team?
Yeah, this is one of the top topics of interest for people because so many people have been part of a dysfunctional team. And they want to know, what should I have done differently? Or they're part of one right now and they say, what do I do about it? I think there's a couple things that you can actually do. I think before you do anything or take any action, you have to recognize there's things you can control and there's things you can't control. I think often see people spending a lot of effort trying to change things that probably are not changeable, or there's a really low likelihood that they'd be able to change it. So for example, they spend all their time trying to change their boss. Well, of course you can influence your colleagues and your boss to some degree, but you're not going to change someone's personality, and you're probably not, at least in a short period of time, change kind of how they deal with you in any dramatic fashion without some major blow up or some kind of major redress. So maybe you can change how people deal with you slightly, but even if you're going to do that, it really starts with yourself, right? What can you do to change how you're dealing with them or how you're dealing with the team so that they deal with you differently? So instead of focusing on, they should do this differently, and if they only did this, then it would all be better. There's a lot of kind of blaming that goes on. Some of it's appropriate, but many times, right, you have to start with yourself. What can I do differently? And part of that is, building some skill in kind of conflict. When there's dysfunction, when there's someone who you don't get along with because they terrorize the team and make lots of demands and bully people on the team into doing work they should be doing, or all kinds of bad dysfunctional things. There's lots of examples out there. The first thing you have to be able to do is effectively kind of have a conversation about it. So whether you read books or do a training course on difficult conversations or conflict resolution, if you don't have skill there, you're kind of lost. You got to have some skill there. And then there's the courage to just do something about it. There's a lot of really avoidant behavior where people just say, well, maybe it'll get better, or maybe eventually they'll leave, this person I have such a problem with. That rarely happens, right? You got to do something about it. So part of the skill is being able to bring up the conversation and then kind of effectively walk people through kind of what are you seeing, what kind of impact is that having on yourself or on the team, and kind of what are your recommendations, or maybe brainstorm some ideas about how to do it differently. But that can be very awkward and uncomfortable, and many people don't want to do it and avoid it. So the first thing you got to commit to is, I'm going to do something about this because it's good for me and it's good for the team, and both things are important, right? If you could contribute a great value to the team, but you can't sleep at night and you're stressed out, and you're thinking about leaving your job every month because you're so miserable, well, that's not really good for the team either, right? It's not good for the organization. So you got to balance what's good for the team, what's good for me. And in most cases, somehow addressing dysfunction, right, or major conflict is useful, right? There's value, even if it feels like there's some risk involved because it's uncomfortable.
I think you're bringing up a very important point, Jeff, about focusing on those things that you can change or influence. For example, maybe we can't change the personality of a coworker, but we can change how we perceive them and how we react to them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because there are always things that I can do differently, no matter what is happening, kind of to me or around me. So, for example, if you take a team that's dysfunctional because there's low trust, maybe there was an event, some years back where someone stabbed the other person in the back, so to speak, and kind of didn't come through on something or took credit for something they shouldn't have. So all of a sudden the trust is diminished. That kind of stuff happens, right? Even if we wish it never did. Well, then you got to rebuild that trust. But let's say that it hasn't really been rebuilt. And so now there's this dysfunction because people don't communicate, because they don't trust the other part of the team. They don't trust the other person that kind of stabbed them in the back, maybe rightfully so, to some degree, at least, kind of right after it happens. But over time, everyone has kind of done their job, but there's still low trust, low communication, stuff doesn't get done on time, deadlines are missed because people aren't sharing information right. This kind of a situation that you hear of a lot. So then the question is, well, what to be done about it, right? And people don't like the idea of kind of, saying I'm sorry, right? It's like the thing you hear the least in any kind of corporate environment, I'm sorry. But I think there's a lot of power in that, right? So if you are the person who has wronged someone else, even if you think they are also in the wrong, a very powerful thing is to say, I'm sorry for what I did or what I contributed to this situation, but I want to fix it. So how can we do that? So saying I'm sorry, I think, is one really kind of practical thing you can do if you bear any responsibility. Even if you think I own 10% of it and the other person owns 90%, I can apologize for my 10%. By the way, they probably think you own 90%,
exactly,
and they own 10%. And therein also lies a problem. To say, no matter who's at fault, it's hurting the team. And ultimately, that's going to hurt both of us too. So for example, our boss may not promote either one of us because here we are sitting around fighting with each other.
As I'm listening to you, Jeff, I'm thinking about that book by Stephen Covey called The Speed of Trust, how we all have trust deposits and withdrawals, and that to maintain trusting relationships, we all need to make sure that we're not overdrawn or bankrupt. And saying I'm sorry, for example, is one way to put a deposit into the trust relationship. And dysfunctional teams probably have bankrupt trust relationships.
That's right.
Or overdraft.
Yeah,
overdrawn.
That's right. And you get penalized like you would if you overdraft on your bank account. There's a fee associated with that. And the fee is, it's like a cycle, right? Because if you're bankrupt, if you're overdrafted, then you have to put in extra amounts of deposits to get back even. You can't just say, oh, well, for the last 6 months, I haven't stabbed you in the back. Well, that's not going to cut it. You're going to have to say, I'm really sorry. I didn't intend to do anything that seemed like stabbing you in the back 6 months ago when I took credit. That's how it kind of came out of my mouth. You weren't there. I didn't realize that it was going to seem like I was taking full responsibility or credit for the project. I wish I could go back and kind of say it was me and you, so that the CEO would have heard the positive about you too. I wish I would have done it differently. I didn't. I'm sorry. What can I do to rebuild trust with you? Because I don't plan on doing that again. But I realize I might have to do kind of above and beyond, right? Because you can't just say, oh, well, I haven't stabbed you in the back recently. Right. People aren't going to get over it until you kind of go above and beyond.
Exactly. Jeff, thanks so much for being on this episode of Good Work Now to talk about strategies employees can use to try to make team work more productive and satisfying for folks.
Certainly, glad to be here.
And if you have any questions for Jeff, you can reach him at drjeffgraddy@gmail.com. And until next time, keep up the good work.